want to ask everybody. I just want to ask everybody that if you would mute yourself, except if you're asking a question. We're going to try to make this as conversational as possible. So feel free to put in questions in the chat, or you can raise your hand, and one of the presenters will be monitoring the screen and try to catch things as we go along. We can come back and return to a topic if we happen to get past it before your question is recognized. Okay. We have a packed agenda today, and a good number of people will want to have you introduce yourselves. We'll start off by introducing the panel today. We'll talk about how to get started with the fellowship application process and the categories of nomination, about selecting a sponsor and submittal questions, submission due date and the confirmation, the jury and the criteria. We'll talk a little bit about that, and notification of elevation, and then ownership of submissions, resubmission, and then what success look like. And we'll try to allow enough time in this hour for some Q&A from all of you. Again, it's nice to see such a large group. Like I said, my name is David Allison. I'm a current member of the Board of Regents of the American College of Healthcare Architects. And I've inherited the fellows group from Angela Mazzi, who is a fellow and is now stepped off the board. So I'm the board liaison for the fellows group. My colleagues, Jennifer Alber is a fellow of the college, and Molly Scanlon. Jennifer comes from Shepley Bullfinch in Boston, and Molly is here representing a non-traditional professional practice here. Molly, the name of your firm again is?
Well, I'm currently at the University of Arizona as a public health researcher. Okay,
great. So if Jen, if you can kind of just go through, what we'd love to have is a very brief introduction of everyone who's on board. Basically your name, rank, and serial number. I think we've got a large number of people, so we don't want to spend too much of our time doing that, but we do like to know who we're speaking to, and where you're coming from. So name, city, and firm. How about that?
How do you want us to do this with 30 people, David?
Well, can you just look at your screen? Are you seeing everybody up there?
Yeah,
I can start. Okay.
Well, I'm going to go to Jim Alatic. Do you want each individual to say something about themselves?
Yeah. Just say who they are, what firm or organization they represent,
okay,
and where they are in the country. We want to see how diverse the group we have here.
Okay, so I'm going to go to Jim because I'm going right across my line, and we'll figure this out.
Thanks, Jennifer. Jim Alatic, Vice President with Indiana University Health, Design and Construction.
Perry. Okay, Perry's on mute. I'm going to give like 3 in a row. Perry, then Joe, and then Wade. So Perry, I think you're off mute now.
Thank you. Perry Harrell, founding principal with Harrell Architects in Houston, Texas.
Joe Sprague, HKS Architects, Dallas, Texas.
And then we're going to go to Wade, and then I see Gowans. I'm assuming that's a last name, Brian, Pansing, and Ron Smith. I'm just trying to let you know when you might be up.
Wade Stang, recently retired, Davis Design, Lincoln, Nebraska.
Brian Pansing, I'm a principal at Facet Architecture in St. Louis.
Yeah, Ron Smith, Director of Medical Planning at LS3P in Raleigh, North Carolina.
Okay, and whoever is Gowans, I'm assuming that's the last name. Do you want to introduce yourself? And then it will be Jay Stouffer, Bill Percival, and David Vincent.
Well, if you're asking me, it's Gary Owens. I'm a principal with Canon Design in the Houston office. And I'm a fellow of AIA and American College of Healthcare Architects.
Okay, so that's what Goins meant. Okay, sorry about that. Jay Stouffer, you guys need to write your names out so I can read them.
Hey, I'm Jeffrey Stouffer. I'm with ACHA Architects. I'm an executive vice president and board member and in Dallas, Texas.
Yeah, this is Dave Vincent. I'm a health partner with HKS, also in Dallas.
Okay, and Bill, before you go, Kevin C., Wayne Hunter, and Antonio Amadeo, you're going to be up next. So Bill.
Hi, Bill Percival, Chief Exec, Medical Development.
Kevin, that's you, Kevin C. You're on mute.
Kevin Crook. I'm with FFE and I work out of my house in Nashville.
I'm Wayne Hunter. I'm with the Cunningham Group. I'm a principal and I'm located in San Diego.
And Antonio, before you go, Sherry Adams, Andy Lane, and AJ Thomas, you're on deck. Antonio.
Yes, good afternoon. Antonio Amadeo. I'm a founding principal of LDC International Inc. in Tampa, Florida.
Oh, hey everybody, Sherry Adams, Canon Design, Mental and Behavioral Health Practice.
Before she was Hey everybody, this is Andy Lane. I'm a health practice leader for Canon Design in Chicago.
And AJ, before you go, Carlos M., Rick Lipscomb, and Steve Temple, you're on deck.
AJ Thomas, Principal Healthcare Sector Leader at Corgan in Phoenix, Arizona.
And I'm Rick Lipscomb. I'm a principal with Washer Hill Lipscomb Cabas in Baton Rouge, Louisiana.
Steve Tomplay, Sizer Architects, New Orleans.
Okay, Carlos, before you go, Greg Moon, Paul Strom, and Deb Smith, you're on deck. Carlos, you're on.
Hi, this is Carlos Marcet with Studio Plus in Fort Myers.
Greg.
Hi, this is Greg Moon, founder and president of RG Moon Consulting in Houston.
Hi, Paul? Deb's. Oh, Deb, you go. Paul, okay. You're really on deck.
Deb Smith with Flat Architects in Tampa, Florida.
And Paul, before you go, Mike Zambo, Sandy, and Vernon, you're the next group. Sorry. Paul?
Paul Strom, HOK.
Okay.
Mike Zambo with partner at Bostwick Design Partnership in Cleveland, Ohio.
And Vernon Rosamond with SRA Architects in Tucson, Arizona.
Okay. And Sandy, before you go, I'm trying to, Michelle, Emil, and Neil, please be ready. Sandy.
Hi, Sandy Gass, HDR's East Region Health Director.
Emil Slavic, Compass SFMP, Somerset, Kentucky, better known as Lake Cumberland.
I'm Neil Corbett, Health Vice President, Health Principal in Atlanta with HDR.
And Michelle, before you go, Keith Smith, Ted Moore, and Tom, I don't know your last name, Tom, you're on deck. Michelle, please.
Michelle Trott, Rochester, New York, from CPL Architects and Engineers.
Keith Smith, Principal of BSA Life Structures.
Tom Testerman, Old Architects, Nashville, Tennessee.
Okay. And Ted, before you go, I've then got Brenna, Fernando, and Enrique. Ted, please.
All right. Ted Moore, Haskell Architects and Engineers, Jacksonville, Florida.
All right. Brenna Costello, Principal and Health Leader for Smith Group, Colorado.
Fernando Rodriguez, Health Planning Principal for HDR in Houston, Texas.
Okay, and now I've got someone on the phone with a 202 area code, then Enrique, then Leslie Saunders, please.
Jennifer, the 202 was Brenna.
Oh, perfect, thank you.
That's okay, thanks.
Otherwise known as a Washington, D.C., so I would have never gotten that. Okay, Enrique?
Yeah, Enrique Onanue, Architect, Code Services, Illinois.
Leslie Saunders with HKS in Atlanta.
Okay, and the next three, Fan, Tiffany Long, and Sylvia, please.
Sorry, this is Fan Luke. I am a facility architect, senior design manager for City of Hope Hospital in Los Angeles, California.
Hi, everyone. This is Tiffany Long. I am partner and health leader for Marmon Mock Architects, and we're in San Antonio, Texas.
I am Sylvia Botero. I'm in Los Angeles. I'm with RBB Architects, and I'm the president of the company.
Okay, I've got John Rogers, Sandy, and another Sandy, and Thane, please. Sorry, my screen's jumping around, which is driving me bonkers. John.
Yes. Yeah, this is John Rogers. I'm a healthcare consultant in Cincinnati, Ohio.
Sandy, F.
Sandy Farrow. I'm a studio leader at Gresham Smith in Chicago.
I'm Thane Eddington with PKA Architects in Portland, Oregon.
Okay, I've now got Scott Holmes, Mark Rowland, and Marwan, please.
Got with DWBR in St. Paul, Minnesota. I'm a principal and soon to be retired, counting down 5 days.
Wow.
You're lucky.
Marwan?
Yeah, Marwan Tamimi, principal at SCSA Healthcare Architecture in lovely Phoenix, Arizona.
And Mark Rowland.
Mark Rowland, President, Rowland Architecture, Nashville, Tennessee.
Okay, William Roger, and then I'm going to have to switch screens. So because mine's filled, and if I miss anybody when we get to the end, please let me know. But William Roger, please.
Hi, William Roger, Senior Principal at HOK, San Francisco.
Okay, and now my screen is complete mess. What? Just give me a Jim Albert, William's iPad, and Craig P, please.
Sure. Hi, I'm Jim Albert from Horcopa Mock in Baltimore, Maryland.
Yes, Bill Ayers, retired from Perspectus Architecture in Cleveland, Ohio.
Afternoon, guys. Craig Passy, Principal, Health Studio Leader with Smith Group.
Okay, and then I've got the real Zach and R. Lamberson and Angela Botzi.
Good afternoon, everybody. This is Zach Weideman. I'm a design manager at HCA in Nashville.
I'm Rodney Lamberson with Strollo Architects in Youngstown, and I'm on the cusp of retirement as well.
And I'm Angela Matzi, and so glad to see everybody here to learn about fellowship. I am a principal at GBBN Architects in Cincinnati.
Okay, next three up are Charles Griffin, Jill Bergman, and Lisa C.
Good afternoon, everyone. Charles Griffin with Page in the Houston office.
Jill Bergman, HDR San Francisco.
And who was my third? I'm sorry, go on.
Oh, Lisa Charan, Vice President in Trova, formerly Ross and Berezini Mitchell, same company, Houston, Texas.
Okay, now I've got Perry H, Jason P, and Sharon P. Perry?
I've already gone once, but I'll go again.
Oh, okay. Well, move your screen.
Oh, okay.
That's okay. Jason.
Howdy, Jason Pouchot with RBK, Principal of RBK Architecture here in San Antonio, Texas.
Hi, I'm Sharon Pula with Horcopa Mock in Baltimore, Maryland.
Okay, I've got the two Adams, Hank and Ann, and then Dan Delk, please.
I'm Hank Adams with HDR, Director of Health, and based in Dallas.
Good afternoon, Ann Adams with Davis Partnership Architects. I'm a principal there in Denver, Colorado.
And dealt with Erdman Architects in Madison, Wisconsin.
Okay, and I think, again, screen keeps moving. Is this our second Wade, or did we start with this Wade? I'm losing track of names.
At this point, maybe we should just ask who hasn't been.
Yeah, who hasn't gone?
Okay, I think.
Hello,
everybody.
everyone. Susanna Erpestad, HDR's Director of Federal Architecture out of Arlington, Virginia.
I'm pretty sure Sheila and Bob have not gone.
That's right. I am Sheila Reuter, a principal and health practice leader for HKS Architects in Denver, Colorado.
Bob Y, that's you.
Bob Yoy, RLF, Orlando, Florida.
Okay, anyone else who hasn't gone, and I apologize for not being the best at keeping track.
Well, I mean, I think there was some value in this for me, at least, to see the diversity of people that have decided to join us today. And thank you all again for being here. We have many of the board members of the ACHA online. We have several emeriti. And it sounds like we have several pending emeriti members of ACHA online. From a great range of firms, large, small, and all over the country. So it's great to have you all here. Again, thank you for being here. So the Council of Fellows was founded by the ACHA in order to advance our unique qualities in the profession of architecture. And by demonstrating and celebrating nationally significant achievements of people that practice in our area of healthcare. For many years, it was modeled after the AIA for approximately 20 years. And in 2020, we decided to completely revamp and update the categories of nomination to make it distinct to our organization. In addition to this update, we continue to try to work towards updating and increasing the value of fellowship in terms of what it brings to our membership and sharing our mentorship and thought leadership. It is recognized for meaningful and measurable contributions and impact to the discipline of healthcare architecture. And that's one of the things that we really tried to do when we were restructuring, is to focus it on the criteria that's specific to our area of practice. It is, in fact, the highest honor for an individual within our specialty area of architectural practice, and certainly within the college. It is not a lifetime achievement award. It's really intended to recognize those who have created a positive impact in the discipline of healthcare design through their ongoing body of work and contributions. And the important thing that you all need to know is, if you want to find out more information after this session, is to go to the organization's website and go to the fellowship tab and search that. So you can find a lot of information. There are good frequently asked questions there, some of which may come up today. And you can really get a lot of good information off the website. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Molly, who's going to talk about qualifications for fellowship in ACHA.
Okay, thank you, David. So welcome all, and I'm going to take you through some of the criteria, and hopefully some of you are taking notes either electronically or the old-fashioned way, and hopefully think about if things are stimulated to write those down, because this may be the beginning of thinking of your portfolio. So there's two qualifications you can control. One is that you are certified for a minimum of 5 years, which means you would have to been in the college by 2018. Okay. The second one you can control is that you are a licensed architect for at least 10 years. And that would mean that after 2013 for you to be eligible. If either of those criteria are not true, I don't suggest you leave the meeting, but you might want to be planning ahead. So the last one is something you can control, but you're trying to demonstrate to a jury. So you're going to try to show distinction in fulfilling one specific category of the nomination over the arc of your career. Next slide, please.
And if I could just ask, we're still getting some background noise. So if people would kindly mute, except for Molly, that would be terrific.
Thank you, Jennifer. So when I've done this process, both for this college as well as the FAIA submission, my mentor and sponsor advised me of something to think of it as a succinct theme. And we're going to be coming back to that. But I think of it as an umbrella. I'm out west right now with a lot of rain. So, so this umbrella is an overarching thing that's going to protect you through this process. You're trying to convince a jury of your peers that you have this overarching theme. And so I think of the umbrella as that overarching theme. The panels of the umbrella are subtopics, projects, or evidence to this theme. If you were a researcher, you would think of that as the aims and objectives of the overarching research that you're doing to demonstrate that. And then I think of the handle as I have to hold the handle. This is my portfolio. I'm in control of this umbrella. It's not my firm's portfolio, although I may be an owner in my firm or, a principal and leader. But I have to show my role within what has happened with these projects. So I have to take full ownership of this umbrella and be in control of it. So when I did it, I thought of, and I was challenged with these 4 questions. If I was formulating a hypothesis or theory of this premise about the body of my work, what would it be? What am I actually known for? And in some cases, I thought I knew, but I actually engaged with my colleagues and my network and clients to ask them these questions. And they gave me a lot of feedback that helped me design this umbrella for the arc of my career. What is consistent of this succinct theme, and why have I been selected to be on these healthcare teams? Is it my precision? Is it a certain subject? What is it that people are attracted to me for related to this, other than just being a healthcare architect? What unique healthcare problems have I been hired to solve? How can I tell this jury about these unique healthcare problems and their solutions? And lastly, can you define which populations you may have been designing for, how you're designing for these populations, where you're designing for these populations, and the impact and influence you may be having on these? Is that in the form of data? Is it information? Is it publications? Is there any statistics that you can use as evidence to stand up with this theme? Next slide, please. So the categories of nomination. Next slide, David. There you go. Thank you. So the categories of nomination, there are 2 categories, but there are sub-bullets within each category. Category 1 is, excuse my reading, but just I'll amplify here, is for the art and craft of healthcare planning and design through either 1A, you are providing superior evidence of planning and design achievements. That's probably what I'll use the term, a traditional architect in the practice of architecture within a firm. 1B, superior evidence of contributions to the practice of healthcare architecture, maybe from not being directly inside of the typical firm. You might be, you might not be. And then category 2 would be progressing healthcare environments through public service, either volunteer or paid positions. Next slide, please. So category 1A, this is superior evidence. The fellowship is a category, is granted to those who have produced distinguished bodies of work. We're looking for the blends of elegance of design and superiority in innovation or high efficient medical planning. And so when I did this, I asked myself, well, I've been a medical planner, and a lot of you are, how can I distinguish that? So I thought of a few examples to give you today. So in my distinguished medical planning, and I'm dating myself here, Back in the late 1980s, early 1990s, I designed one of the first hospitals that was all going to be digital. It was a conversion of digital medical equipment, the first medical record, electronic medical record. What did that mean for the planning of that facility? I ended up having to take many other people to this facility in the future because my clients were constantly asking the same questions, going over that threshold of moving from analog radiology, analog testing equipment to digital radiographic equipment. That's something that was unique to something that I had done on a project. Another one was I was on a space planning project for a government project that then became a template for how the government decided to plan their facilities. These things you've all accomplished, you've all done these things maybe in something else, or mine have been superseded by someone else that came along, but they were important in my arc of my career of the planning. So you want to be able to call those things out as to what is unique about your medical planning experiences. Next slide, please. If you fall into category 1B, this has several subpoints to it that may be your leading point. This is evidence where you're contributing to the practice of architecture, but you might not be designing the architecture itself. So you may be a researcher. You might be in educational field of educating healthcare architects like David is at Clemson University, and those of you that have been at other universities, or you may be contributing to literature and publication or oral speaking that's significant to the field. And you may have all three of these, contributing to this category. Next slide, please. The category 2 is for those who are contributing to healthcare environments through public service. When I first read this, I thought maybe this is strictly volunteerism, but it is not strictly volunteerism. If you're in this category, you may be a leader to service to the profession in the discipline of healthcare architecture. That could be through a leadership of an organization, nonprofit. Maybe you've been the Academy president. Maybe you've been the ACHA president. Maybe you've been a combination of these in several different, settings. The impact of healthcare architecture through a healthcare organization. We have some members that actually work for healthcare organizations. And so you may be contributing through that. Lastly, you may be a healthcare architect working within the government or another type of regulatory organization. Maybe you work for a codes and standards organization. Maybe you were with the American Hospital Association. It could be any number of different organizations.
Contributing to FGI or an
yes,
AHJ and things like that.
ASHRAE, all those types of things. Next slide, please. Okay, so the other critical part in this process is a sponsor. You will need a sponsor, and that sponsor must be a fellow of the ACHA. There are a limited number of those people, but they are listed on the website. They need to be familiar with your portfolio, and this person has a role. They should know your work. We did have a discussion before. If you feel you don't know somebody that well, you need to look at 1 degree of separation from yourself to network, to become familiar with fellows and have someone begin to know your work. So this person is to assist the nominee with developing that succinct theme, that umbrella arch over the part of your career. They're to review your exhibits and things to see that you're supporting the category and the hypothesis that you're putting forward about yourself. They are to write a 1-page letter on behalf of you as nominating you as a fellow into the organization. And submissions that are made without a sponsor letter will be automatically disqualified. So you don't want to do that. They will contact references or work with you in contacting references, and their real goal is to review those letters and assure that the category and the supporting evidence that they're contributing as a reference is sort of all in alignment. You want to keep supporting this hypothesis through and through and through to demonstrate quality more than quantity. So next slide.
Well, before we move on, I think the value of having an ACHA fellowship, just to add to that, Molly, is the fact that they've been through the process.
Yes.
They
Yes,
know
of
what
course.
success looks like from their personal perspective. And it is really critical that it should be someone, you know, as someone who writes a lot of reference letters in my role, you know, for a variety of different things. They need to know who you are. They need to be able to, they just can't be, this is a good guy, right? Or a good person, right? Or
Right.
whatever. So
This is your sounding board. This is your
Yeah.
sounding board through the process. Because some people may not feel confident in the process, or as they're going through, they have questions, et cetera.
Right.
So next slide, please. So in submitting questions, to that point, the sponsor is supposed to be your first line of defense. As David was pointing out, they've been through the process and they should know. If you and the sponsor cannot navigate a question or come to a logical answer what that should be, then you take that and submit the question to the ACHA executive director, who will seek the correct source. If it's something that's known or if it's something that's unknown, they will go to the board liaison and find an answer for you. Next slide, please. So the submission date is the same every year, or has been so far. So if you're thinking about this for 2023, it will be June 1st, 2023. If those of you are online and are planning, way ahead planners for 2024, it'll be the same date the following year. But the submission must be sent in no later than that date. And we strongly encourage, and that's where we're having the meeting now, is that you actively begin, you know, the process of doing this. Next slide.
Right. And if I could just add, I think for most people, the Achilles heel are the reference letters. You as the applicant have control over everything else, but getting those letters in early, or at least on time, you can't write them for yourself. So that's one of the things just to be really sensitive about from a timing perspective.
And the fact that it's not something you can just throw together. I mean, you really do need to design this submission and pull it together in a coherent way. And as Molly pointed out earlier, how you organize your information so that you know, a jury can digest it. You know, the last thing in the world you want to do is make it hard for the jury to understand who you are.
Next slide for me. There you go. Okay, so when you are doing this submission, for those of you that
certainty.
obviously have been paying your dues, I believe this is pronounced certainty.
Certainty.
Certainty. So there'll be an application process. It'll go through the same system where there are checkpoints in the certainty process. So it's similar to how you re-register every year, except for you'll be doing the fellowship process or the submission. So that's online. It is due. This is an old slide here, so it has a previous date, but that has to be submitted by 5 p.m. Central Time on that date. There are no exceptions. So you want to be doing that early. So I'm going to transfer over to Jennifer now and then be back for any Q&A that we have.
And then David, could you go back one slide, or did you deliberately want to?
I wanted to deliberately go past that one.
Okay, there is a jury.
Jury has not been approved. Yes.
Perfect. There is a jury.
I thought it had been. I thought it had been not shown, but this presentation somehow is going on it. But
yeah, so
the reason for that is,
go on.
Is the jury has not been approved yet by the board. What our goal has been to identify a potential list of jurors that represents a diverse cross-section of approaches towards fellowship and represents different kinds of areas of practices, approach to practice.
And you'll need a favorable vote of 3 out of the 5 jurors. And as David said, the jury itself will be deliberately constructed to have representatives who have different backgrounds, different history of practice. And it's a rolling jury, so that there are always, I believe, 2 people on it who've been on it at least 1 year before, and that helps with the consistency issue, which obviously matters. You don't want, you know, what happens in 2016 should have some relationship to 2023 in terms of criteria.
Jennifer. 3. 3
3.
roll.
Okay. And the evaluation, distinction within the category of nomination. And again, the clarity and the thoughtfulness of that short statement of who you are and what you've done really makes a difference. The jury, it's obviously somewhat subjective. They need to interpret those qualities. Consistency, which is one reason, of course, it's a rolling jury. And the jury will not add any criteria. The jury does not need to say, oh, I've heard so-and-so speak and they're really terrific, or I worked with them 10 years ago and they were great. That's irrelevant, as is anything negative. Well, that guy, you know, I don't like him. I didn't like the way he presented. None of that matters. It's really going to be the body of the work in the submittal. Next slide, please. As I said, it's inherently subjective to a degree. But again, with 5 people, most of whom have been on the jury before, you know, again, there's consistency of outcomes. Submission alone, as we just said, and 60% of the jury, 3 out of the 5, need to vote in favor. Next slide, please. The board liaison will compile a summary of the jury's recommendations. And this is a little bit of a technical point. The jury makes a recommendation to the college, but the jury itself does not say, you know, John Smith, congratulations. So, and then of course, and this should not come as a surprise to anyone, nominees, sponsors, or others, you don't get to approach the jury with questions or any of that. So I'm sure you all understand that one. The jury, as I said, will make their recommendations to the Board of Regents of the college, and that's the body that formally approves and confers fellowship. A successful fellowship, the college president will communicate to successful nominees by phone and letter, and unsuccessful nominees by general letter. Sponsor will also receive this information. All of this happens simultaneously, and the goal would be that the notifications happen on or before the 1st of October. And I do want to add that unsuccessful nominees can receive feedback. Again, it's not an opening of a conversation, but a number of bullet points about things the jury had either hoped to see or didn't want to see, or issues like that. Next slide, please. And the college will, whatever you submit becomes the property of the college. And copyright issues, you know, please be sensitive to those. That tends to be specifically on issues of photography. Let's go to the next. You may resubmit, but up to 3 consecutive award cycles, and then you have to wait a couple of years prior to resubmission. And here are recommendations. Look at the successful candidate application on the website. I know when I applied, I found this enormously helpful since I didn't have a clue as to what anyone was talking about. Be really clear about the category of nomination. This is one of those situations where you really want to be a little OCD. Structure the application in the exact order and answer the questions that are asked. As you know, this is not the place to get wildly creative. Do have your client sign your declaration of responsibility. Another thing to happen earlier rather than later, because you can't really control it. And as Molly mentioned, this issue of influence and impact. When you're thinking of what do I want to include in this, how do I think about the body of my work? It's impact, impact, impact. Let's go to the
evidence
next.
of the impact.
And evidence of the impact.
Yeah.
So I think we're ready for questions. And there were 2 that came up. Let's see, we have 3, but I'll get to that one in a minute.
I'm going to end the show just so I can see everybody too. So
let's see, let me just go through some of these questions. So Brenna had a question about when does the 10th year commence? And I'm going to
Mhm.
ask someone at the college to look into that because it sounds a little legalistic and I wouldn't want to give you the wrong information. But I'm sure we can get right back to you on that. Marwan asked whether international projects and research would be accepted. My off the cuff assumption is of course, but again, I'd like someone from the college to confirm that. I can't see the American
It's your
College of
body, as
Healthcare
long as it's your
Architects.
body of work.
As long as it's your
it's
work.
part of your
It's
body
about
of
you.
work.
It's about you. Yes.
I'm going to say a jury member can certainly not be a sponsor.
Not in the year that they are jurying. If they've been in the past, or, you know, we don't know who's in the future, but a past person could, but not the current jury.
And Molly, I know in the AIA one, you have to have a 3-year break. The college may not have that, but we should just confirm that.
Won't be until about 9:30 though.
We do not have that.
Good, thank you for answering that. The college tends to be a little more generous in some ways. May a sponsor support multiple candidates or only one? My assumption is multiple. But if we hear otherwise, we'll let you know. Replying to may a jury member be, so jury 2023 cannot sponsor someone, that's correct, but we need to tell you who the jury members are first. We need to get the college to confirm who the jury members are first. And then they
We
would
will
be the
have
first
that.
to tell you, you're not, I can't sponsor you. Sorry.
And you're on. So we're going to
Yep.
have that by
Yep.
next month, right?
Yep, the moment it's approved at the board meeting, we will get that on the website.
Okay.
Yeah,
so-
another common question, Jennifer, related to that, I just put in the answer, was that some people ask if your sponsor can be within your firm, and the answer is yes, they can.
Okay, I have barking puppies. So those are the questions from the chat. I'm gonna, other questions, raise your hand and maybe the puppy will be quiet.
No other questions?
Oh, we've got a hand up, Bill.
I just want to make sure that my understanding is that the application is more about the impact on healthcare. And the reason that the foundation of my question is that I develop hospitals, and like the one you see behind. So in effect, I'm my own client. Could you give me some guidance around that potential headache or roadblock, or however you want to describe it?
Yeah, so my comment to you, Bill, would be how many people does that hospital service in that area? So if you're developing that hospital for something, you're going into a community, right? And that hospital is going to service tens of thousands of people or hundreds of thousands of people. How many admissions does it have each year, et cetera? Maybe the locations are important. I don't know anything about your work. I apologize, but maybe
that's all right.
maybe you're influencing rural America, right? Maybe you're influencing, maybe it's geographic that's special about it. Maybe all of your facilities are about, Indian Health Service. I'm making this up, but
Sure.
you look at the populations that you're serving, and the improvement that you're making by doing that development could be very significant. So look at the data underneath. I find architects tend to look at square footage and cost, right? That's what we're always put together is it on time and on budget? That's not really what you're looking for here. So
Right.
what is my thing would be, look at the populations, and you should know admission data, over a period, or it grew. That would be very interesting to me, I think, from a jury member. I don't know if David has, and Jennifer have another comment about that.
Yeah, and I
Right.
think it's getting the category of application right for you, right? So you're a developer of healthcare facilities, is that correct?
Hospital.
So, yeah. So, I mean, in effect, you're probably falling under what the service category of that in terms of the impact that, what you do. You're hiring architects, you're not personally designing them, I take it. And so,
Well, I do a lot
these,
of planning. I do a lot of planning.
uh-huh. So, you might be in the same position as someone who works for a healthcare organization.
Okay.
Or even like HCA or someone like that. You see what I'm saying? Does that make sense?
Yeah. Well,
We have
it's unique, so.
We have another question saying so many of the people on this call seem to have national or international experience. Is it, can I be successful if I only have regional? And the answer is absolutely yes. And I say that because when I was a juror, one of the successful candidates had a really strong portfolio, all regional. It's about the quality of work. Really doesn't matter if it's 700,000 square feet, 70,000 or a 7,000, great renovation. It's probably have to think about impact a little differently, but it's going to be about the quality and what kind of impact. Did you train other people in your firm? Do your clients now have a higher standard of care and expectation from their architects? That's where I do think you want to be a little creative and think about that more broadly. Let's see. Can the submittal be, either one, would a successful AIA fellowship be a good starting model? I would say do it the other way. The ACHA is a little gentler than the AIA. That's just my personal experience and thought.
We won't say gentler. We'll just say more open to our area of practice.
Open to our area of practice, and it's a little less rule bound in a way, and that's all I meant by gentler. And can the submittal for FAIA be minimally adapted for FACHA submissions if it was healthcare? Absolutely. So if you started with the AIA, you're probably in really good shape. But again, this is a healthcare focus for the college.
And this used to work really well when our criteria was very much aligned with the AIA. And so just be careful of just not submitting us the FAIA package, because the criteria are different. Okay, so in fact, I was encouraged to really repackage my FAIA submission for FACHA, but just make sure that you're addressing the criteria or the categories of selection, and that you're really making this specific to a healthcare audience, which is different than the AIA. I mean, it's sometimes you have to kind of bend your application for FAIA to make it palatable to architects that don't always necessarily place the same kind of value on what we do.
Anne has asked whether you can have two sponsors. I think the answer is one have one official sponsor, and you can have an advisor who may be one of your recommended, one of your reference letters. But I don't think we want to get to two sponsors. I mean,
I wouldn't confuse the application.
Exactly. Don't make this.
Jennifer said something earlier that's important, which is just like exam questions. Answer the question as asked, not inventing another side process that can cause unnecessary confusion to the jury.
I want to go back to the AIA though. You can go on the AIA website and look at some of their submissions. Most of them will not be healthcare, but it's another good way to look at what a successful portfolio might consist of. And some of them contain, even, for an architect like me who, deals primarily with projects, but there may be some thematic, one of the 7 or whatever number of exhibits there are, may be thematic in nature, not necessarily just project A, project B, project C. So you may want to just take 10 minutes and go see what they have there, and especially someone like you, Bill, you may find something that seems relevant in a broad sense, even though not specifically healthcare.
And even just for guidance on how to organize a package. I mean, again, it's not just the story you have to tell, but how you tell the story. And we are architects, we are visually oriented. We in healthcare, we tend to be organizationally oriented people too. So, so how you effectively tell your story is really important.
One good piece of advice I received was pretend it's not, when you're coming up with your sort of your impact statement, pretend it's not you. Because most of us do not want to say, Jane Smith, transformed the entire, process of healthcare design. No, well, maybe a couple of you do, but most of us don't. So it can be a little uncomfortable, but if you think of yourself almost in the third person, you might find it a more comfortable exercise. Just pretend you're reading about a good friend. What would you say about a good colleague friend? What would you say about them? And that may help you with that.
Yeah, to Jennifer's point, that's why I emphasized I engaged colleagues around me and my clients and asked them those questions as if it's a third person. And even though it was me receiving it, it really made me reflect on what they were saying. And I found out new ways to describe my own work. I really found this process very reflective and very insightful. And I found it very useful, not just for the fellowship application and then the success of that at some point. I have used everything that I put together in my application in some other arena in the future, whether it was for other awards or other reflection or other, having to substantiate. Once I had this evidence about myself that I had been so reflective of, it really was it was very thoughtful to be able to go back and look at that and see what the impact was and then bring that forward. And it's just been immensely useful moving forward. It kind of puts a benchmark for you at a point in time. And then you can sort of see yourself reflective back and reflective forward from that. So just in being encouraging to those of you that want to do that.
Or even if you're nearing retirement, even if you're nearing retirement, it might be a really nice way to think back and, how do I think about my career? And David, I cut you off. I'm sorry.
No, I cut you off, I guess. I'm sorry. But I just Ted had a question. Can you provide more examples of having a specific theme under category 1A in particular? So, I think it's again, how you package it. Some people might have a particular area of specialty practice within healthcare that they have a body of work that has distinguished itself. But others might have a cross-section of projects. It can be a cross-section of project types. It doesn't have to all be in one focused area of practice, different size projects, different scale projects. Again, I think you have to ask yourself, what's the consistent theme that transcends the individual projects, and how does any work or evidence of or project illustrate the theme that you're presenting for? Does that make sense, Ted?
Yeah, it does. I was just trying to understand should you cherry pick out some of your particular projects that all align to a theme, as opposed to looking at your entire body of work.
Well, you obviously, for most people at this point in their career, they have more work than the jury will be able to digest. So, don't throw in everything, but including the kitchen sink. So, yeah, I think it's what your theme is, and then what projects best illustrate the theme.
I'll give another example, Ted. So in mine, I was running a small practice in Southern California at the time. I have never been what I call a three-dimensional building designer. I've never designed the skin or the exterior of any building I've ever done, because I was always the really detailed medical planner. So I had this practice and I went to my clients and they were like, you solved the most amazing renovation projects I've ever seen. People gave me cracker boxes to deal with, garbage spaces, and I was to apply what was becoming evidence-based design. And a lot of them at the time wanted these views of nature inside of closets. It was nuts, but I succeeded. I had like 12 projects where views of nature were really critical. One was in an ICU, other ones were in radiology, and I made a feature out of these projects of how I was looking at views of nature. And so one of my themes underneath my umbrella was this evidence-based design to the view, what is this views of nature and how is this supported? And so I went back and got information from the client about these spaces. One of them was a radiology where they could throughput more patients because of it. And they noticed the number of patients that were lower stress. I didn't have statistical scientific things to prove that, but I was basing it based on the client's information of what they were giving me. So I took this item that I thought was, garbage from my portfolio, right? Or meaning that it's not big and it's not luxurious, right? Of the things that we often think of. And I made it into this boutique section of all these little vignettes of what I was doing. And I also used that for my FAIA as well. And so it doesn't have to be that. It's really, what is it that, what's the kernel of the theme that you're talking about? And what is this evidence? And I had these, dozen projects, and I didn't maybe show all dozen of them, but I picked like, 3 or 4 of the top ones and what these clients were saying about these. And that was, I got selected on a lot of projects because I was the one that was willing to do that tough project for them. And, I was proud of that. But it doesn't mean that it was the billion-dollar hospital, right, that had all the luxury bells and whistles. So hopefully that's an example for folks.
We've got one more question about the number of fellows per year. And that number, Lisa, I think has typically been, 2 to 5. But this, I think what you're seeing tonight is the realization from the college is that there are many more people than 2 or 3 or 4 a year who should be fellows. And the comment that many of us have often received is, well, I don't think of myself that way. I think of myself as a good healthcare architect, but I'm not fellow material. And I think what we're asking of you is to think, give yourself the benefit of the doubt. And maybe you're probably much more likely to be fellow material than many of you have considered. So I don't think that the relatively limited number of submittals and successful candidates in the past is lower than the college would like. I think it's fair, David, for me to say that, right?
Yeah, that's one of the purposes of this, is to demystify it. I mean, it's not, fellows aren't gods, and so they're, it's not such a high. I mean, we want it to be a high bar, but it's not an unattainable bar for someone who is actively contributing in the practice of healthcare architecture.
Hey,
So,
hey Jennifer, if I may, when Peter Bardwell was a mentor for years, and I chatted with Peter, and I asked this question of why do I need another letter in front of AIA or ACHA? And he said, at that point, when you put the F in front of AIA, ACHA, it's when you've taken from the profession for so long, but now it's time to give back. And you finally achieved a competency where you start to give back to the profession. And that really helped me believe that I actually should do this, because I believe I'm at that point where I should give back to the profession. So I think it helps to justify it a little bit better.
Right. I mean, I could imagine someone doing a category and say, one of their things is saying, I have mentored 14 people who have gone on, for years, who have gone on to be fellows themselves or active participants. I mean, to me, that's part of the, that is a really good thing. It helps to have some statistics to make that a real thing. But Mike, that I think you're absolutely right.
And I would actually say his comment was actually too late. We shouldn't be at the point of fellowship entry that we're just now starting to leave that legacy. I think really most of the people on this call have done that for many years. And like you say, how many people have you grown or fostered with? But I mean, I can think of the themes as everybody's introducing themselves. I'm sure, I don't even know how many people are fellows versus not, because I know some were founding fellows, but so many people on this call we've done projects with that I can think of, they're more specialized in behavioral health, or they're who we go to with all of our big green fields, or who we go to with the small specialized difficult projects. And so I think there are some brands, if you will, aside from building brands, but people's portfolios that I know of on this call that have gotten that subspecialty, which is amazing. We're architects and we're healthcare architects and we're subspecialized in, maybe we do MOBs, but we do them really well. And, you know, I do equipment. So how do we get this deep? But there's a lot of really good brands on this call.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
Molly responded to Marwan, all right, just now. I mean, we're not judging whether all of you are qualified. That's going to be the jury's case, and there is no quota. Okay, so I think the college would like to see more people apply for fellowship and become fellows, but that's ultimately based on the qualifications you submit. So
there's
Thanks
no
for the
limit.
answer.
Yeah,
There's
there's
no limit.
there's no limit, no limit, no quota. Yeah.
Because it's very obvious it's going to take some time from us actually to get it ready. I mean, the portfolio and all the documents needed is going to take some time. So I prefer to do it, not to waste my time, to be honest with you. But if there is no limit, that is encouraging. Thank you.
I actually found my original portfolio in the garage, cleaning it out this summer, and it was 20 years ago, whatever it was. So it was something I needed to toss and scan, but it was interesting what I thought at that time were my big projects. And they were pretty amazing projects back then. But I thought, boy, if I had to do a portfolio now, it's like, what are those same themes that have bracketed my career and that type of thing. So.
Well, that's the other reason to be timely. I found, I ended up pivoting my career. So as David said, I'm no longer in the profession directly in what I would call a traditional role. And as your career advances, I found marking that point in time to be very effective for me, because if I move on, then I would have to select a different category. Now I would select a researcher category, which I wouldn't have done years ago. And so my body of evidence would be different. It may include some projects, but they may not be as relevant. So I think that that's the other advantage of, looking at it. And whether you do it this year or you do it in a subsequent year, I just think, especially if we've got younger folks on the call here, you need to keep track of your portfolio throughout the arc of your career, because you don't know when you're going to do these types of things or things that come up. And I was just glad I had been trained to do that from an early on experience in the profession. And I found other colleagues were like, gee, I never kept track of any of my photography workers, things like that. I just did. But so it's very handy to be doing that, to have to retrace your steps.
Got one more question, which is, in terms of choosing a sponsor, do potential jurors know that they are being considered? And David and Ann, I would assume the answer is yes, given the time frame.
Yes.
Yeah. So those people would be able to tell you, if you reached out to one of them, they'd be able to tell you, I'm so sorry, I can't do it. Have you thought about person X, Y, or Z? And I'm not convinced your sponsor needs to be the person who knows you the best. Your sponsor needs to be someone who can help move this along for you. So they need to know you, but they don't need to be your closest pal ever. And my sponsor for this was someone I had worked with on the examination committee for the college. We'd never worked together on a project.
Oh,
but
sure.
He was from a different part of the country, different kind of firm. And I thought that would be a really good balance.
Come on, everyone knows you, Jennifer.
Well, we're happy to stay on and answer any other questions. We have exceeded our allotted time, but if there's any remaining questions, please feel free to forward them. We want to
Can we just get
can
we get an emotion reaction from folks? Is this a thumbs up? What did you think of this just before we go?
Was it helpful? Was it helpful?
Was it helpful?
I guess is the...
Very.
Okay.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, definitely helpful.
Extremely.
Oh, good.
Very helpful.
Would they frown upon if we wrapped our submission around a bottle of wine and send it to all the jury members? Is that not the good thing?
Yeah, I think that counts as a bribe, but
Mike, I prefer champagne, but that's
okay,
fine.
there you
Yeah.
go. All right.
Might as well make it cash.
Well, if
Okay.
you're a jury member from Chicago, that would probably be par for the course for
yeah.
Illinois. I say that having
Ooh,
grown up in
ooh.
Illinois.
Oh, all right. We're gonna
Oh,
get
come
into
on, every
territorial
governor in
politics.
jail.
Well, you're
Okay.
right. You're right.
Boy, I didn't mean to go there. Sorry, guys.
Well, this is the conversational part of the thing that we.
That's
wanted
right,
to
we're
make sure
after hours.
It was high touch. So
Yeah, we're not recording
again,
anymore, are we?
I think
Yeah,
may
we
be.
should probably turn that off. I don't know if Emily can turn that off.